Now we are right in the middle of ramp season, and if you don't know about ramps, this video might not make a whole lot of sense to you, but in my last video I covered what ramps are and how to use them, and we prepped these ramps. I'll leave a link to the ramp video, go check that out after this. Today we're gonna make spaghetti alle vongole, but we're gonna add a layer of flavor using the almighty ramp. I'm very excited about it. I hope you are too. Let's just jump right into it. The last video I made, we made a ramp puree, some ramp oil, and we prepped a few things for this video. We got about 20 ramp leaves separated from their stems and bulb, plus like 10 whole ramps that we're gonna saute. For a quick recap, to clean the ramps, you just peel back any of the slimy layer around the stem and cut off the root end. Then soak to wash. They're wild, so they're gonna be pretty dirty. And then drain and dry. It's nice to have one of these salad spinners. Then you're gonna wanna take 70% of the ramps and separate the leaves from the stems and then leave the rest of the ramps whole. Now to make the ramp puree, you take 80% of the ramp leaves that you have and blanch them in salty water and then immediately plunge them into an ice bath to shock them. Then squeeze out the water and add it to a blender with about a quarter cup of olive oil and then puree that. Salt to taste, and I add some Calabrian chilies with some of the juice that it's packed in. You could add some lemon juice, would be nice, or some lime juice. Now you've got a nice puree that you could do a lot of things with. One of which is we're going to take it one step further and strain it through a fine coffee filter to make a nice ramp oil that we're going to use for garnish. I'm gonna toss these whole ramps and throw them under the broiler to get a little bit of char, and then we're gonna add them to the spaghetti. They'll sort of eat a little bit like spaghetti and get caught up like that. We're gonna dice up the stems along with some sliced garlic and some chili. And we're gonna saute that with the clams and some wine. And I'm gonna chop up some of these finely, sort of like parsley. Then I'm gonna make some ramp breadcrumbs with it as a nice little crunch on top. And of course we're using some spaghetti, my favorite spaghetti from Italy. I'm gonna leave a link down so you can purchase some spaghetti if you want. Use the code NACS at checkout, you'll get 10% off. Now you could leave the stems whole. They'll kind of act like little spaghetti strands if you do, but I'm gonna dice them. Now for the breadcrumbs, we're gonna take the remaining ramp leaves like we were gonna chiffonade them, but we're just gonna slice them down the middle in half and then give them a fine dice so that they'll incorporate nicely into breadcrumbs. Next, slice 1 to 2 cloves of garlic. Now I have about 14 little neck clams here. You can use whatever clams you have. I store them overnight in the fridge on a metal sheet tray just with a damp towel over them. You want them to be able to breathe and have air. You don't want to suffocate them. Now to clean them, I add them to a bowl of water, add some salt, and just let them sit for a few minutes. Next, we're gonna make the breadcrumbs. Add a pan on medium heat and add a few tablespoons of olive oil, and once hot, add the finely diced ramps. Cook for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then add a couple handfuls of the breadcrumbs. Cook until the breadcrumbs are nicely browned, then kill the heat and zest in some lemon zest. Then let that cool on a plate with some paper towel, season it with some salt, and set that aside for later. Next, what we want to do is get the broiler on and char some ramps. Take the whole ramps on a sheet tray, drizzle with some olive oil, just enough to coat, and then season with some salt and pop those directly under the broiler. You want to get a nice char, flavor, and color, so get them pretty close to the flame. I'm trying to sort of replicate a grilled ramp, but indoors. So once they're charred, set them aside to cool. We're going to use them later. Now get that pot of water that you blanched the ramps in for the puree earlier and bring that up to a boil. Next to that, we have a large pan with a lid that we're going to use to steam the clams and cook the sauce. While the water comes up to a boil, it gives us a second to kind of scrub our clams, make sure they're nice and clean. Get them out of that water. You'll see all that grit that you were able to get out. You're going to need a nice dry white wine for this. Now you know I don't like making a full pound of pasta for myself on this show, so I'm just going to make about 2 servings of pasta here. And besides the pan with some sort of lid to create steam, you're also going to need a strainer over a bowl to catch any of the clam juice, and then another bowl next to it for the shucked clam meat. Now the water should be boiling, so let's get the sauce started. Get that pan on medium to medium-high heat and add a few tablespoons of olive oil and add the garlic. You want to give that garlic a little bit of a head start because it's bigger than the ramps. After about 30 seconds to a minute, you add those diced ramps in. I'd also add chili flake, but I forgot. Cook until you start to see a little bit of caramelization going, and then add the clams. Give them a shake, and then kill the heat and add a cup or two of white wine. Get the heat back onto medium, add the lid, and then you want to start to steam the clam. Cook for 4 to 5 minutes or until the clams start to open. They won't all open at the same time, but when you see one open, take it out, add it to the strainer to cool, and then cover goes back on to let the rest steam, and you're just going to keep pulling them as they open so that we don't overcook them and make them tough. Then as they cool, I take most of the clams and shuck the meat out of them, reserving a few whole clams for plating and garnish at the end. I also like to leave the clams whole, but you could also chop them if you want a smaller texture. Now the water should be boiling. Make sure the water is salty enough and then start cooking the pasta while we reduce the sauce. This pasta is going to cook for about 9 to 10 minutes, so then I'm going to pull it at 7 to 8 minutes and then finish cooking the pasta in the sauce so that I can plate it once it's perfectly cooked. Now once the sauce has reduced and thickened, you want to give it a taste. It probably doesn't need salt because the clams are salty, but just give it a check. After about 7 to 8 minutes, give the pasta a taste, make sure it's ready, and then I add the pasta to the sauce, reserving some of the pasta water to use as needed. Turn the heat on to about medium high, and the pasta is going to start to absorb that sauce. But the pasta is still going to be too al dente. So I'm just going to add a little bit of pasta water at a time, shaking, stirring, and tossing the pasta to emulsify the sauce. And I'm just going to do that until the pasta is perfectly al dente and the sauce is thick and creamy, and then there's enough of it. Then kill the heat, add the rest of the clam meat, the charred ramps, the ramp puree, and toss to combine, and then plate it immediately. To plate it, we're going to get a nice tong full of the pasta. Try and get the strands to sort of hang long and loose, and then twirl up into a little mound with a large ladle, and then onto the plate. Then some of the clam meat, followed by a couple spoonfuls of the sauce, few of the whole clams, the ramp breadcrumbs, one of the charred ramps to tell you who the star of the dish is, followed by a little bit of that ramp oil. Come on. That's a beautiful thing right there. It's a really nice next step from like a regular spaghetti alle vongole, but ramp season is very short. You can't get ramps. You can just leave them out. I have a video for regular spaghetti alle vongole that I'll leave linked down below, as well as the ramp video from last week. Give it a shot. Let me know what you think down in the description. That's all that I have today. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care of yourself and go feed yourself.